Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Get Loved Up podcast. I am so excited today to share with you two amazing men who are really taking wellness to the next level. I am here with Robby and Cyrus, and these two men are phenomenal, and I'm going to let them really share what they have built amongst themselves. But just a little backstory, me and Robby met I want to say 7 years ago, and we were both doing our health thing and just getting started. And I just remember so much like his energy and his spirit, and going to his house and seeing this huge fruit rack and experiencing his passion. And I remember thinking at the time, like, he's going to do so well and he's going to inspire so many people because of his energy and passion alone. And I remember around that time, he also told me about Cyrus, and he was beaming about Cyrus so much and saying so many great things. I was like, I want to meet this Cyrus guy. And he's like, I'm doing a retreat. I was like, well, I want to go on the retreat and so I know that their bond is such a magical one. So to see them grow together, I just can't wait to unpack it in front of you guys, because I finally met Cyrus like this year only. And he was amazing to meet and actually connect with after hearing so many great things. But I really want to kind of go back to the beginning for both of you all and just kind of share with them how you came into this path of wellness. And let's start there, and then we're going to get into the relationship.
Well, Koya, thank you so much for the intro. To think about what's transpired since we initially met and the growth I've seen you go through and all the people you're helping, it's amazing. So it's an honor to be here today and share our stories. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12, just about to turn 13. And type 1 diabetes, that's the form of diabetes where you have to inject insulin to manage your blood glucose levels. There's type 1, there's type 2, those are the major versions of diabetes. We'll get into the details there, but type 1, we don't know the exact cause, we don't know what causes it, but you got to inject insulin to manage your blood glucose levels. My older brother had type 1 diabetes, so I was familiar with the condition, I knew what was going on, and that was the beginning of my journey of like, wait a minute, okay, I gotta take control of my health here. And so I tried different diets over the years, ended up trying a Weston A. Price style foundation diet. I tried a plant-based ketogenic diet, and I tried many, many different things. And the bottom line is, when I came across a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, which is what we teach in the Mastering Diabetes method, my life transformed. It was just this incredible, like, I know you love energy, your audience is into that stuff. Like, it was such an energetic change of this lifestyle, beginning to eat fruits and vegetables in large quantities as a person living with diabetes. That's something that's just not really accepted in the mainstream. We're trying to change that. People with diabetes, they're scared of sugar. We're going to talk about that today for sure. They're scared of fruit. And so as a person living with type 1, we are amazing test subjects for insulin sensitivity. Okay, we know exactly how much insulin we inject. We know exactly how many grams of carbohydrate we consume because we calculate our carbohydrate to know how much insulin to inject, and we monitor our blood glucose throughout the day. Many of us wear continuous glucose monitors. So I actually see my blood glucose being reported to me every 5 minutes. I get a new data point on my phone so I can see exactly how the food I'm eating is impacting my blood glucose levels. So anyways, I start following this diet. This is now in December of 2006. So over 13 years ago, I started following this new plant-based, low-fat diet, and I saw an incredible improvement in my insulin sensitivity. So I'm eating 700 grams of carbohydrate per day and injecting a physiologically normal amount of insulin, so about 27 units of insulin per day. Whereas people with diabetes, a lot of them are told, don't eat any more than 50 grams of carbohydrate per meal. Don't exceed that. Don't go more than 70. Or if you're doing low carb, you're doing like 30 grams of carbohydrate per day. So it's just a dramatic difference. And I saw this incredible turnaround. All of a sudden, my energy comes back. I was really struggling with that. I was struggling with cystic acne. That went away. I had allergies. I would get sick every single year. That disappeared. I had plantar fasciitis. So I was literally wearing big blue boots at night to do passive stretching. That went away. And I just saw this amazing turnaround and decided, you know what? I got to start educating people about this, and got into the research and found out there's almost 100 years of evidence-based research explaining exactly what happened in my body. And I had this realization that, wait a minute, as a person living with type 1, I saw this incredible transformation in my insulin sensitivity. What does that mean for this broader audience of people living with prediabetes and type 2, which is over 110 million people in the US alone? And I found out that what I was experiencing in my body is literally the solution to those diseases. They can disappear and go away when you maximize your insulin sensitivity, which I experience every day, every meal. It's just this constant reminder of like, we've got to keep telling people about this. And this is the solution. So then, Cyrus and I, we met. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, but here we are today. We had the honor to write a book with Penguin Random House and publish that. And that got on the New York Times bestseller list, which is super exciting for us. So we're just getting this message out to as many people as we possibly can.
Thank you so much for your story. And that must feel really great for you in your heart, for one, just to master your own health and your own body, and now be able to take that story and help others do the same thing. That must feel really amazing.
For sure.
I love it. And Cyrus, fill me in on what brought you to this point. What brought you to this point of health and wellness?
For sure. So I was diagnosed with similar to Robby, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 22. So he was 12, I was 22. But this happened back in the year 2002. So this was, almost 18 years ago. And, I was a happy-go-lucky college student. I was a senior at Stanford University. I was just trying to graduate, move on with my life. And I got diagnosed with 3 autoimmune conditions within a 6-month period. So the first one was Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. The second one was alopecia universalis, which is just jargon for don't grow hair, lose all hair. So I don't have any hair. I don't have any eyebrows, eyelashes, nothing. And then the third one was type 1 diabetes. And I got all 3 of those within a 6-month period. So when I was in the hospital, as they were treating me because my blood glucose was alarmingly high and in the 600s, they uncovered that I have all 3 of these autoimmune conditions. And so you can imagine as a 22-year-old just trying to graduate from college and move on with your life, getting a pretty grim health diagnosis is not fun. It's pretty scary. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to do with my life. I didn't know how to eat. I didn't know how to exercise. I didn't know if I could exercise. I literally didn't know what to do. So the doctors at that time told me that eating a low carbohydrate diet was the only answer for living with diabetes. That's it. That's the only thing I could do. And so they told me to count my carbohydrates, reduce my carb intake, don't eat breads, don't eat cereals, don't eat pastas, limit my fruit intake because fruit equals sugar, don't eat potatoes, don't eat rice, don't eat bread. And so I said, okay, fine. And I started to eat more turkey burgers and red meat and chicken and fish and olive oil and cheese and peanut butter, because those were all low carb foods that were supposed to make me feel better, and they were supposed to make my glucose much more controlled. So fast forward a year, I've been doing this low carbohydrate thing for the better part of a year, and I can't even tell you, Koya, I felt terrible. So my glucose was supposed to be controlled. That didn't happen. My insulin use was supposed to be controlled. That also didn't happen. My insulin use was creeping up from 25 units a day to 30 to 32 to 37 to 39 to 43 to 47 units a day. And despite the fact that my carbohydrate intake was low, and I literally was so frustrated that I didn't know what to do. So I started learning more information. I started talking with people, and every door that I opened, whether it was a video online or a conversation with a friend or a recipe book, the answer was plant-based diet, plant-based diet, plant-based diet. And I kept on hearing this over and over again. I was like, why am I being talked to about a plant-based diet? It's everywhere, right? And again, this is 2002. Plant-based diets were not cool. They were not popular, right? You were kind of a weirdo. You were a fringe. You were like one of those people who were like, you were alternative if you were deciding to eat a vegetarian or vegan or plant-based diet. So I said, I don't really care what, you can label me and judge me however you want, but I'm in this for my health. So I started to learn more about a plant-based lifestyle. And then I learned from the same guy that Robby learned under, who is Doug Graham. And he taught me how to eat a 100% plant-based diet. So overnight, I ditched red meat, white meat, fish, chicken, dairy products, gone. Literally gone, vaporized out of my diet. And I started eating fruits and vegetables. That's it, 100% fruits and vegetables. Now, I was concerned that my blood glucose would go through the roof because my carbohydrate intake was going up, and that's what the medical world had told me. You eat more fruit, you're going to take more insulin. You eat more potatoes, you're going to take more insulin, period, end of story. But the exact opposite happened. I started eating what I consider to be like mountains of papayas and mangoes and bananas. And it was unfathomable how much of these fruits I was eating. Robby knows exactly what I'm talking about, because when you eat with Doug, you eat like literally giant plates worth of fruit. And I started eating these and my blood glucose came down, and it came down very quickly. And as a result of that, my insulin use came down very quickly. And I'm talking within the first 24 to 48 hours. So I started using less insulin, having less, lower blood glucose values. I had way more energy. I was more hydrated. I was going to the bathroom less frequently, but I was like retaining more water. And I was able to just play sports again, because I love playing sports. I mean, I love playing soccer and going to the gym and running and hiking and biking. And I was able to return to doing all those things, but not only just do them again, but do them with higher intensity. I could recover faster, I could go harder, and I could just sink everything I had into athletics. So it was very obvious to me that that was a much better solution. So long story short, I was so excited by what was happening inside of my own body, I went back to graduate school. And I studied at UC Berkeley for 5 years to go get a PhD in nutritional biochemistry. This is like super nerd nutrition.
Wow.
Right? This is the kind of nutrition that like, it doesn't even sound like you're speaking English anymore. You're just using a bunch of weird enzyme names that have no, that are like unmistakable. So I started learning this subject of nutritional biochemistry. And what I learned was that there's this whole vault of information that, like, technically speaking, anybody can access. But in reality, very few people actually read, because it's complex and it's confusing and it doesn't really make much sense. But this what we refer to as evidence-based science, right, is information that scientists have uncovered over the course of time that teaches you about the things that promote chronic disease and the things that reverse chronic disease. Diabetes just happens to be one chronic disease within that umbrella. And what I learned very quickly was that the evidence-based science that has been uncovered and discovered over the past 100 years is very strong, incredibly strong, that teaches that diets that are very rich in plant material and that happen to also be low in saturated fat are unbelievably powerful at not only delaying the onset of or preventing the onset of chronic diseases, but also for, here's the key word, reversing chronic diseases, such as type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, such as cancer. Yes, I just said reverse cancer, such as reversing hypertension, reversing high cholesterol, reversing chronic kidney disease, reversing fatty liver disease. You can do all of this using your food. And my mind went crazy once I started to learn this information, because I was currently experiencing that. Okay, just for full clarity, Robby and I we're not reversing type 1 diabetes. You cannot reverse type 1 diabetes. But what we were doing is learning how to eat a diet that maximizes our insulin sensitivity and maximizes our opportunity to have abundant health. But if we were living with any other chronic disease like hypertension or fatty liver disease or chronic kidney disease, the way that we're eating, according to the evidence-based literature, is the most powerful solution to reverse those conditions. So it's kind of a double whammy.
According to our testimonials, it works person after person after person.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how well it works. It really is.
That's amazing. And I love your story, because basically you transformed your own life. You took control of your life and not only reversed what you had been experiencing or changed or shifted what you were experiencing, but you also said, let me dive deeper and understand what is happening so that I can share that with other people, because people want to know the science. And I know it's so easy just to go to the doctor and believe the doctor and believe the government and believe all these things that are sent out to supposedly help us. But there's so many other things that are proven to help us. But like you said, people aren't doing the research for it. And like, it's not really the goal of the government or doctors to do that extra research to actually see how natural fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds can actually be what we need to experience optimal health and wellness. So thank you for doing the research for us and spending 5 years educating yourselves so that you can write a book that is now New York Times bestseller, right? And just changing lives around the world. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the birth of this? First of all, how you and Robby met, and then how this movement became as big as it is now.
Yeah, I remember the first time that Robbie and I met. We had known about each other because Doug, our co-guru, had he talked to me about Robbie and talked to Robbie about me. And
that's right. But I also have to add in here, because Cyrus is too humble to say this, but I first heard about Cyrus because he was the testimonial in the back of the book that changed my life. So Doug Graham's book is called The 80-10-10 Diet, and he was a testimonial of being a person living with type 1 who was doing this method and had this amazing turnaround. So I remember Googling his name and looking him up on the internet, and it's like, wow, this guy's really fit. Like, this is working out well. Like, this is a good inspiration. So we knew of each other because of that, but we hadn't really contacted until this event in San Francisco.
And speaking of 80-10-10, I think it actually connects us all, because I also read 80-10-10 by Doug Graham, and I actually loved it. And it also opened my eyes as well. And now I'm about 60-20-20, but still that book and its like foundation, it laid a solid foundation for me to realize the truth about food. So that's
100%. Agreed. Yeah. So that book, The 80-10-10 Diet, actually came out, what year was it? 2006? Is that right?
That's exactly right. Came out in December 2006. And then that's when I contacted Doug and started this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like, I almost think that like the 80-10-10 diet might have been almost like too early for its time, to be perfectly honest, because it's a great book, and it really gives you it's like you said, it sets the foundation. But I'm not sure that like the world was ready to hear that message at that time, you know? And now the world is much more open to the idea of a plant-based diet or a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet or a plant strong diet, whatever you want to call it. So if that book were to come out now, I think it would make a much bigger splash. But props to Doug for writing that and putting in a ton of effort back in the day. So fast forward to 2010, I believe it was, maybe 2011. Robbie and I both got invited to give presentations at a meetup in Oakland, California. So we had a mutual friend, and she said, hey, Robbie, why don't you come to this? Hey, Cyrus, why don't you come to this? And so we both went to this event, and we both had an opportunity to sort of tell our own personal stories and talk a little bit more about the science of, you know, plant-based eating. And while we were there, I got to watch Robbie as he was presenting, and then I got to meet him, and vice versa. And as I was listening to him, I was like, I think he's going to be important for some reason. I don't know why. I really don't know why. He's in my life for a reason, and I'm definitely going to get his phone number, and we're definitely going to hang out. And there was like another voice talking to me that was like, it was like, pay attention, Cyrus, right? And so from that moment onwards, we had sort of started to strike up a conversation with each other and get on the phone every so often and just chit chat about life and, you know, about what are the efforts that he was making to try and spread the message about diabetes and what was I doing. And we eventually got to a point where we decided to collaborate and work together, but just sort of like do it cautiously. Because I was sort of like, well, I like you, but what if I don't like you 6 months from now, or vice versa? What if you decide that you don't like the way that I work, you know? So we ended up striking up a partnership and starting to teach people how to transition their diet in a small group setting. And this is people with all forms of diabetes. And we recognized right off the bat that the information that we were acting on was very powerful, that people were changing very quickly, but most importantly, that Robbie and I had a very good working relationship. It was very mutually respectful, and we were able to communicate rapidly and make changes and work together well. So from that point onwards, we decided, all right, enough walking, it's time to run. And then we started accelerating the pace at which we were working and building a much bigger platform. And eventually we created Mastering Diabetes, which is the platform that exists today. And Mastering Diabetes now has grown to be a very large size to be able to, you know, help thousands of people living with all forms of diabetes transition towards a more plant-focused lifestyle. And in doing so, you know, we've been having a blast. At least I've been having a blast, and I'm very grateful to be, you know, partnered with Robbie.
Every time Cyrus has a little, he listens to that voice of his, pay attention, pay attention. I've seen that happen repeatedly in areas in his life as we've been running Mastering Diabetes, and it's like, that's a smart voice. So
the voice knows something that I don't.
I'm glad it all happened. And yeah, like you said, like it's a lot of fun, you know, working together and just seeing the response from people who apply the information that we're teaching, and just their testimonials just light us up. I mean, this is all about. And every single day, like literally every day, new testimonials are coming in and pictures of people holding the book and saying this book has changed my life. Like I cannot put into words what that means. And I just hope that everybody gets that feeling in life. That's like one of our just at the core of being human, contributing to life, like meeting other people's needs is just like, it's the best thing that we can do. And it just feels amazing at this point.
Well, that's amazing. You're doing a great job, and you're definitely changing a lot of lives. And a lot of people have that desire, but they just don't know where to run with it. So what's been your biggest challenge thus far that you've had to overcome in your journey?
That's a good question. It's a good question.
Ooh, I'll tell you what it is from my perspective, but go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. You got the answer. Go
okay.
ahead.
Here's the biggest challenge the way that I see it. Right now, if you're living with diabetes and you go to the internet and you're looking for information, it's confusing. It's real confusing. You go to Instagram, you go to YouTube, you go to Google, you go to Facebook, you go and you start how to lower blood sugar, how to control blood sugar, something like that. And you just get hit with like multiple different perspectives: a low carbohydrate diet, a ketogenic diet, a plant-based diet, a low-fat plant-based diet, a low-carb diet, a super low-carb diet. And it's just, most people with diabetes, they get exhausted just trying to understand why there are so many different approaches, right? And then I think what it leads to is a little bit of apathy. And they're sort of like, well, these experts can't even agree with these so-called experts can't even agree with each other. So I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to sit on my couch and continue to eat the way that I'm eating, and I'm not going to change anything, right? And so the reason why I say this is a problem is because, again, if we go back to the evidence-based science, right? Evidence-based science means science that is developed using a very systematic protocol that tests variables and then uses that information to then expand, to then create more information, right? So an evidence-based paper, an evidence-based experiment is built off of previous evidence-based experiments that have shown things in the past, right? Point being is that a lot of the information that you find online today appears to be evidence-based. It smells like it's evidence-based. It looks like it's evidence-based. It uses the words of being evidence-based. And truth be told, it is evidence-based, but a lot of it is basically based off of short-term evidence, right? This is what happened to people who ate this ketogenic diet after 14 days. This is what happened to people who ate a ketogenic diet after 3 weeks, after 10 weeks, right? And that information is important. Don't get me wrong. It's important to understand how things change quickly, but it's more important to understand how things change in the long term. So if you separate evidence-based science into like stuff that happens quickly and stuff that happens over the long term, there's a clear division between the two, And the stuff that happens in the long term is, in my opinion, more important than the stuff that happens in the short term. So
right. You have to give your body time to actually assimilate and connect and integrate what you're doing, right?
For sure, like emotionally, mentally, physically, but most importantly, I could give you a nutritional philosophy to follow today. And as a result of that, you could lose 12 pounds in the next 30 days. And you might think to yourself, well, this is a great weight loss tool, right? This is a phenomenal weight loss tool. But if the consequence of performing that nutritional intervention made it so that your cholesterol climbed by 50 points, or that you increase your risk for chronic kidney disease 2 years into the future, now we have a problem.
Right. And that's what's happening with some of these higher fat things that will help people achieve the goal of losing weight, but it's not the healthiest thing for their body.
That's exactly right. So a lot of the marketing online, a lot of the pseudo science that's passed around it looks convincing and it smells like it's good science, but in reality, it can be deceiving and it can lead to disastrous outcomes in the long term. And unfortunately, people who are just looking for healthier ways to be end up finding out that information. They act on that information. And then years into the future, they find out that they're actually in a worse spot than when they first began. And that's the problem that I think I see in the overall world of like chronic disease prevention. And it's a little frustrating, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
Something that I would like to change over the course of time.
Well, you're already changing. And let's say someone's listening, like you said, so many people in the world have diabetes and someone's listening. What would be the top 3 things you would tell them I can listen to both of you, but Robby, like what would it be the top 3 things you would tell them they can do right now after listening to this podcast to really turn their health? What are the top 3 things you like? Definitely do A, B, C, and of course, get your book, right? But what are the top 3 things that you would suggest they start doing right after listening to this podcast?
Okay, so number 1, I don't want to come across as like self-promotional here or something, but I truly believe this. Number 1, you have to get educated. You have to really understand the why. And we put so much effort into that in the beginning of the book, of the science and the explaining what's happening. And it's so important. So whether you're picking up our book, whether you go watch some of our videos on YouTube, you could Google insulin resistance diet, what's eat and why. That video has like over 1.5 million views, really popular. That will give you like the basic science. You could watch the movie Forks Over Knives. Like you could read Koya's book if you haven't picked it up yet. Like there is so much to get educated, really understand what you're doing. Don't just like think, oh, just because somebody said to do this, I'm going to do it. Like really own it. Like I know why they said to do that. I know how my body works and I'm going to go into this with confidence. So number 1 is to get educated. Number 2 is allow yourself to make the transition slowly. You get a bunch of education, you read all these testimonials, you get excited, and you jump in too quickly, and a lot of things can go wrong. Number 1, your gut microbiome might not be able to handle all the fiber that you're going to start having on this program. So actually changing one meal at a time and really going slow ends up working out best in the long term. And then tip number 3 is I think it's really important for people to become aware of how much fat is in their diet. Just raise your awareness. I'm not telling you to actually make any specific change or anything, but just use a nutrition logging app. And I'm not saying to do this forever because I know it's a pain in the butt and it's annoying and counting calories is no fun, but it's literally just an awareness tool to be like, okay, wait a minute. When I have an entire avocado, when I have a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil while I'm cooking, or I have that handful of nuts in the afternoon, like become aware of the amount of fat you're consuming in your diet and see that connection between how you're feeling. Because what we're talking about here at Mastering Diabetes is reversing insulin resistance. That's the core of what we do. That's what the entire book is about. That's the cause of all blood glucose fluctuation. That's the cause of people developing prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. But it's also at the root of that long list of conditions that Cyrus listed earlier. Okay, so cancer. You have insulin resistance, you increase your risk of a wide range of cancers. Fatty liver disease, chronic kidney disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, like insulin resistance is at the core of this. And in addition to that, low energy, brain fog, weight gain, if you are experiencing those, you are likely insulin resistant. And this entire book is about understanding how the fat you consume, how that impacts your level of insulin resistance. So you got to become aware. So number 1, get educated. Number 2, go slowly. And number 3, become aware of how much fat you're eating in your daily diet.
I love that. And I love the fact that you started with get educated and understand your why, because you need to have that why when you meet resistance, because your family might not agree with you. Your friends might talk about you. It's not the popular thing, even though it's growing, it's still not necessarily mainstream. And I agree 100% with what you said. Once you know your why, when you're met with resistance, you're able to stand in your truth, stand in your power, and keep the course so that you can start seeing the results. Like Cyrus said, it might take some time. And, once you start seeing the results and seeing your health change, you're like, wait, this works. I don't care what anyone's saying, but you have to give yourself time to get to that point, which is why, like your second point, move slowly, because sometimes I know when I started my journey in veganism or plant-based eating, I did it one thing at a time. First, I cut out chicken, then turkey. And then every time I cut something out that wasn't necessarily the best for me, I felt better and better and better and better. And some people are going to jump in and say, I want this, I'm ready for this, and 100% get your book and do everything you say. And some people are going to tiptoe and say, okay, let me wait. And I feel like both of those ways are valid. And people always ask, like, when is this going to take effect? When is it going to start working? It's like the sooner you educate yourself and just take it one day at a time, like you mentioned, and just observe how you feel, you know, and just take notes with how you're feeling, the more you're going to understand how it's going to unfold over time. So that was brilliant advice. Thank you so much. I know people are going to receive great value from that. And I also think it's very compassionate, because I know there's a lot of good information out there, and some people move at different paces. And that's one thing I've always liked about you, is that you're just very compassionate in your approach, and realize that, hey, look, this is the information, get with it. But also I understand if it's going to take some people a longer time than others. So I really appreciate your approach and your recommendations.
Thank you, Koya. I appreciate that.
And Cyrus, would you say the same things, or do you have a couple more you want to add to that?
Yeah, one other thing that I would add to that too is I would say, maybe even before the action-packed steps that Robby suggested, which I fully agree with, is opening your mind to the idea that you can actually reverse chronic disease using your food as medicine, using primarily your food as medicine. Because for the longest time, people have been told that when you develop a chronic disease, that you can't reverse it, you can just manage it. You know, you hear this all the time. People say, oh, you're living with diabetes. Well, you know, you can't really reverse your diabetes. You can just, it's always going to be there, right? Kind of similar to, like, once you're an alcoholic, you're always considered an addict. You're just an addict that's no longer drinking alcohol, right? And the truth is that when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to heart disease, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, fatty liver disease, many of these like common chronic metabolic illnesses that affect most people, those conditions, sure, you can manage those conditions, fine. But that's not what we're suggesting. I'm suggesting that you can reverse and be done and eliminate those conditions from your medical record. And I'm not just saying that because that's something that I think is cool. I'm saying that because, again, the evidence-based medicine has shown that over and over and over again. So if you're the type of person that doesn't understand that doesn't know it, that may not believe it, then I would, before you do anything, I would just spend some time educating yourself, just like Robby said, and convincing yourself that the effort that you're going to put in is going to lead to a reversal, as opposed to you just kind of managing it so that it becomes less problematic over the course of time.
I love that so much, because it sips into kind of what I'm passionate about, which is spirituality. And what I heard you say is just, first you have to open your mind of the possibility that it is possible. And it's like, once you open your mind and the heart of the possibility, and then let all that education pour in, it's going to be assimilated better than if you're resistant and like, oh, I don't know about this. You energetically block your blessing, if you will, or energetically are actually affecting the assimilation of the food when you have so much mental resistance or negativity to what you're doing. But if you have an open heart, an open mind, and you're like, okay, this food that is abundant in nature, that is straight from God, is going to be a part of my body and help me achieve optimal health, you definitely energetically set yourself up to receive the education, the food, and the whole process of healing a lot better. So thank you so much for adding that piece. And I also appreciate you, Robby, mentioning, you know, my book, which is the tools for mental, spiritual, and physical health, and how setting that precedence of realizing that it's just, food is a big part of it, but it's not just the food, meditation and breathing, and just also just realizing that we are here to thrive and shine and be vibrant. And if anything is affecting that, we should look at it. And we should look at, like, you know what, how can I shift in a way to where I'm experiencing health and vitality? And that's definitely something both of you have done. And I'm so happy to have you on the Get Loved Up podcast. And I'm so happy that you've taken time out of your busy lives and your growing community, which I want to get into now, is your community, because now a person doesn't have to feel like they're alone. They can actually tap into your community and feel a lot of support. So can you talk to me a little bit about how your community has grown over time, and also how people can become a part of that community?
Okay, Koya, there's so much to talk about here, but I got to take a step back and say how much fun it is to be on a podcast with you and get to take it to that next level. Because the truth is, what you just talked about, what's in your book, addressing that mental side, the emotional side, the spiritual side, that's truly at the root. Like that's the next level. Yeah, we're talking about all the mechanics. We're talking about the food. We're talking about logistics. But what is it that leads people to eat these really terrible foods, to do some of the emotional eating, there's maybe self-sabotage, like all that stuff? That's sort of the realm that you play in, and it's so, so critical. And it also ties into what the community aspect of our program brings to the table. So Cyrus says this all the time, and I couldn't agree more. We didn't realize how powerful the online community would be until we saw it in action. It truly is a critical component to getting into this lifestyle and then maintaining it. So, we're a digital company. It's an online coaching practice. We do retreats when COVID-19 is not happening. And those in-person events are fantastic. But the amount of learning and connection and accountability and support and motivation that can happen through online communities is incredible. So inside our coaching program, we have a members-only Facebook group, and people are encouraged to post in there and be honest and vulnerable. And those are the posts that get the most support. Like, they just get an outpouring of hearts and likes and comments and support. Like, so when somebody's, able to express, I'm struggling, I'm challenged right now, that's when the community comes out. And I always tell people, look, when you join our program, the only thing I'm asking you to do, I have one thing, just communicate. It's all of you do is communicate and express what's happening. We can help you one step at a time. We're just going to inch you forward as long as you're telling us what you're struggling with, and the community is there. So we also do, Zoom calls like this, and we have small group environments where there's like 10 or so people in the room, and you're either living with insulin-dependent diabetes or non-insulin dependent. So the people you're communicating with actually have the same type of diabetes as you. And in those calls, a lot of people, they just come and listen. They might not even have a question that day, but they are so happy to be there in this environment. Well, I've never been in a group of people who have type 1 diabetes. I've never been in a group of people who want to reverse type 2 diabetes, like Cyrus was saying. That's not even in the consciousness of my friends who also have diabetes or my doctor. And now I get this group of people they're doing it. They're successful. I'm inspired. I'm motivated. And so we do that. We have large group Q&A calls. We do all the community aspects that we can using technology. And it's just a lot of fun.
That's amazing. That's so great. And I feel like that building on that aspect of community, I have a dear friend, Dean Ornish, and he is all about that. If you don't have that community, that personal element, like that is at the foundation of really having support. It's not just about having a boyfriend or girlfriend, a wife or a husband or kids. It's about community actually outside of your immediate family that you can go to and talk to and process with, people with something that you have in common, right? And so I love that you all have created that for your community, and people can go and tap into that. I think that is absolutely priceless, and you two are absolutely phenomenal. So I have a few ending questions that are just a little bit of fun, so I don't want you to think about it. It's going to be more like rapid fire. I've never done this with two people, so it's going to be
lightning round. That's my favorite. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I'll start with you, Cyrus. Okay. If you only had one vegetable and one fruit you can eat for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Mangoes and mangoes. Yeah, that's my answer.
No vegetable. You're like, I'll just take mangoes. Okay, Robbie.
I'm going to go with mangoes and arugula.
Oh, yes. I'm getting me some arugula tonight. I love that. Okay, we're going to start with you, Robbie. If you could snap your finger and tomorrow we can wake up in Robbie's world, what would it look like? Okay.
Everybody would be growing their own food everywhere food can be grown. Like permaculture would be just all over the place, in cities, in rural areas, and it'd be local food, local energy, and people would be eating ripe, delicious produce straight from their local gardens, feeling amazing, having jobs, having energy, harvesting rainwater. There's nothing more to fight for. Life is just amazing.
I like Robbie's world. I'm going to be abundant, eating the rainbow. Thank you for that, Cyrus.
Woo, I don't know if I can top that. That's a killer world right there. I would say I would like to live in a world where there's just the conflict doesn't really exist. There's too much conflict in our world today, whether it's political conflict or economic conflict, or whether it's interpersonal conflict. It's just too much, in my opinion. So I'd like to get to a point where in Cyrus's world, people get along with each other. People look at each other in the eye. People give each other hugs when they meet each other. People are not out for self-gain. And people can really address one another with the true respect of, that a human should be giving to another human. And I think all other problems will resolve themselves if we can get to that point.
Sounds like love to me. I like Cyrus as well. I think I want to live in your world. That sounds amazing. Love and abundant fruit. Okay. We're going to snap our fingers, and it's coming, because I truly believe that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And the more that we come together, and like you guys came together and okay, let's do this together. Let's help people together. And just coming on to the Get Loved Up podcast and blessing us with your knowledge, we are making a difference and making strides. So I just want to thank you all so very much for sharing your life, dedicating your life to this mission, because you can go off to Fruit Island and just eat fruit and be happy, but you're dedicating every day, your hours, your waking hours, half of your sleeping hours, running this company and running this business to make life better for a lot of other people. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being light workers and making the world a better place.
Thank you, Koya. I need to see you more often. I love you.
I know, it's incredible.
Your happiness is just it's great.
Yeah, no, Koya, I mean, I totally appreciate the hard work that you put into there's a lot of people who spread the message of health, eat this food, don't eat this food, do this exercise, don't do this exercise. But I think one of the things that separates you from a lot of other health coaches, health practitioners, however you want to label yourself, is that you also spread the message of abundance that comes from within, right? And that, we all do live in a world that can be and is abundant. And it's a question of whether or not you're willing to find that abundance inside of you, and then allow that abundance to govern every decision that you make on this planet. So if I haven't said so already, that comes comes out of you, and there's nothing anybody can do to block that abundance. And I think it's contagious, and I wish there were more people like you.
Thank you, Cyrus. That is so sweet. I feel all of these heart love. My heart is smiling right now for both of you. Thank you for the love. Thank you for coming on again and blessing my community with your wisdom. And so where can we find? We know we got the book, Mastering Diabetes. Just share your handles and your website so people can make sure they get in contact with you. And we'll also list these in the show notes as well.
Okay, so number one is you can find us on the Mastering Diabetes podcast. So go to any podcast app, type in Mastering Diabetes. You can catch us there. We put out a new episode every week. You can find us on our website. We have lots of testimonials, blogs there. It's masteringdiabetes.org. Check us out. We're on Instagram at Mastering Diabetes. Facebook at Mastering Diabetes, same thing on YouTube. And of course, the book you can get everywhere. Books are sold. We also read our own audiobook. We added some extra material at the beginning of each chapter. That was really, really fun. That's on Audible. That's on Google Play. If you like digital books, it's on Kindle. It's on Nook. I'm sure you can find it at your library. The book is everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Have a good rest of your day. And everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. It means the world to me that you all tune in every single week, and just make yourself available to take notes and spread this information to your communities. Share this podcast with someone that you know, someone that you love, someone that it can be a benefit to their life as well. And until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the world one day at a time, one breath at a time. Peace and love.